if your daily routines are, I never make decisions, I offset it all to her because, well, she's smart and capable, or it's 50-50. What you're doing is taking 50% of the burden you should be carrying and putting it on your tiny wife and saying, well, you're smart, figure it out.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Feedback. I'm your guy, Nick Alfano, and we have a special guest in the studio today because you know how I roll. I do not do Zooms. I only do lives. Lucky for me, this guy's about an hour and change away, hour and a half away. We met probably over a year ago now.
Yep.
Yeah, a little over a year ago. We'll kind of get into that for a second, but within one breakfast, one little 45-minute meal, we figured out real quick how much in alignment our core values were. And as a result, we've been helping each other ever since. If I can help him with something, same, and then vice versa. And it's been a really cool relationship. So I'm excited to have this man here. He is technically still active. I'll let him tell his story, but you know how attached I am to the military and everything they do, even though I've never served, because we use a lot of their fundamentals and principles in our program. So my man is up there near the base. He drove all the way down here for this episode. Mr. George Hayworth, welcome to the show. Talk to us. Give us a quick intro. Let these people know who you are.
What's up, Nick? Thanks for having me here. My name is George Hayworth. First and foremost, I'm a husband and father. I'm a combat veteran. I served in the 101st Airborne Division on active duty, deployed once to Afghanistan. Now I'm in the National Guard. That's why Nick was saying I was sort of still in a little bit. I'm a weekend warrior nowadays. And then outside of all that, I am the founder and CEO of Elite Sentinel Coaching. And quite frankly, I have Nick to thank for giving me the push to dare to be greater and to do something of importance in my life. So that's what we're here to talk about, and that's what we're doing.
Awesome. Great intro. Thank you for the kind words. Like we talked about a little bit, the 45-minute breakfast that we have. It was kind of the way we were introed to David, right?
Yeah.
Basically was like, hey, you got to meet this guy. He's in your backyard. I think he's a great fit for what you're building. I think he could even be like a leader in your community. And that was kind of like the premise of our original meetup. And then within minutes, I was like, bro, you're way further along and more advanced than you think you are. I think you need to do your own thing, and I'll just help you. So we could talk about that for a second. I know every single podcast on the planet Earth, people just ask you what your story is. They want to unpack it. They want to spend time with that. Spoiler alert, you guys can find that anywhere. So, we'll make sure you can find this guy by the time this episode's over and you can hear all about his story. We're going to touch on it briefly, but then we're going to get into the shit that matters. So, George, if you can just kind of break down a little bit of your story, maybe even leading up to how we met, and then we'll kind of jump off.
Yeah. So let me do a little bit in reverse, actually. Let's hit that breakfast and where I was at mentally. And, I had that limiting belief, that mindset that, well, why me, right? I'm not special enough. I wasn't special forces. I failed Ranger school. I'm just some regular Army guy. I'm not the guy. So why could I do something, right? No one's going to watch that. And, you quickly helped me see that doesn't matter. And in fact, who you are, whoever you are, whatever your story is, if you do it with purpose and passion, you're going to help others grow and heal. And so that was kind of the push I needed. I had this lifelong programming, this narrative that, I wasn't good enough, and I had to kind of prove it everywhere, and I needed to reach some, accomplishment level, and then I could do something. And so that's really that narrative. But to take it back to the beginning, really, that narrative was prevalent my whole life. And that was also coupled with kind of this coping mechanism of wearing masks everywhere I went, because the way that narrative was coupled was, if they only knew the real you, they would hate you, they would reject you, they would make fun of you, right? And so I was so insecure for a very long time, pretty much my whole life growing up. My parents got divorced when I was 16. There was several years there ahead of time too that were very problematic, very difficult. Our home was really intense. Every argument is life and death. Everything has to be to the maximum extent. And if you don't meet the highest level, failure is not an option, all that kind of stuff. So I had a lot of really overly charged emotions and feelings about things that probably weren't very helpful for me. In some ways they were, right? I did well in sports and school and all that kind of stuff, but it was honestly just another mask. The achievement wasn't actually really about because I was, a healthy person from the inside out. It was this kind of desperate need to kind of get relief. And so that carried through. My parents divorced. It just amplifies all my problems. I'd been addicted to porn already as a teenager. I was exposed super young, which really starts to twist the mind. There's a lot of research now showing what that does to the human brain, and it's nothing good. And of course, that's in secret because you go to church and you got to hide that. So I got to wear my church mask, and then all these other masks everywhere you go. Fast forward to being an adult, right? I wanted to serve my country. 9/11 happened when I was in 7th grade. So I pretty much knew from that point forward I was going to do something with the military. Eventually joined the Army Army ROTC. Got a scholarship to school, went active duty. Met my wife when I was in active duty, made my deployment. We got married after the deployment. And for a while, things were pretty awesome. But really what happened there is after our daughter was born, my wife was really struggling with postpartum. I was emotionally crippled and unavailable to really be there for her in that moment. And all of little George's fears and all these masks, weren't good enough anymore. And the real me wasn't the man I should have been for my family. And instead, I became a very selfish, kind of emotionally crippled version of myself. And very long story short there, caused a lot of damage in my marriage. I was not a good guy for a long time. And it wasn't until very later on that I finally learned the things that a good man should be. It's comprehensive. It's not just one thing. It's not just aggression. It's not just toughness. And in reality, the things that I thought made me a man were really just another mask. My uniform was just another mask to hide behind all these insecurities, or to cover those insecurities. And so then, with all these struggles and our marriage is struggling, we're on the brink of divorce. I left active duty, and now the one thing that still kind of gave me some security and confidence was just gone. And basically over a 5-year period, I pretty much just really put myself on a downward spiral, really damaged my marriage, had to really claw back from the brink. But thankfully, with a lot of help from a lot of people, I was able to start mentally healing myself and taking accountability of me and changing me from the inside out. And that's how, a very long, roundabout way, I eventually started my growth journey in a healthy, positive way, and got connected with Nick. And after that period of growth, I felt like, hey, it's time to pay this forward. And so that's why we're here, and that's why I help Nick with what he's doing, and we partner on many things because we're very passionate, because we know the consequences of what happens, especially to young men, if they haven't learned these basics of what make a good man, to be a good husband, to be a good father, to be a good business owner. All those things are kind of co-mingled with these fundamental truths that most of us didn't learn. And I certainly didn't learn them until way too late in the game.
All right, guys, that was his entire life in 4 minutes flat. I know you obviously have to leave some things out there.
We can go deeper on anything. I'm just trying to...
Yeah, no, pack it all in. I took a few notes there. I do have a couple questions. First one that came to mind as you were explaining, and I've heard your story, and I've heard the longer, slower version as well. But I don't know if we've answered this one. Was your father military? Was anybody military in your family?
Nope. I'm kind of the weird one. I was like, I'm going to join the military. So,
but did it feel because you said it was very much like every single conversation was kind of life or death, or kind of exaggerated, or it seemed life or death, over the top.
So I guess in some way it was very kind of like drill sergeant, discipline, but it was more of from an emotionally charged point of view. It's like everything's going to be a fight. So it's like walking on eggshells to not have the fight. You know what I mean?
So fight or flight mode in your own house.
Yeah, all the time. And is mom mad? Oh, I don't know. I don't want to make mom mad, or is dad mad? Oh, is now a good time?
Who was the tougher disciplinarian, mom or dad?
They were
kind
of both pretty tough. I'm the oldest too, so things were definitely harder on me. I think the expectations on me were, because I'm not just the oldest, I'm also the firstborn grandchild on both sides of the family. So there was a lot of pressure on me to be awesome.
Yeah, take care of everybody under you.
Yeah, I mean the rules are strictest on me. If I got a B, it was a big deal. If my brother got a B, it was like, oh, okay, try harder next time, Jacob. And it was like, so there was a lot of that going on. And when you're 11, 10, 12, whatever, that stuff is pretty confusing, because that is your whole world at that point. In the grand scheme of things, it's not. I wasn't beaten severely or anything. My level of trauma is relatively insignificant. And that that's why I want to drive that point home. It's not woe is me. It's parents today need to take that seriously, that even like little dysfunctions
Sure.
can have
Snowball.
massive
Yeah.
consequences on your child. And again, it doesn't excuse my behaviors. My parents' failings weren't an excuse for me to be
And I want to stay on that
bad
for a second,
husband.
because that's one thing I'm adamant about, and I know we agree on, is like, it's tough to show a grown man that his programming is what's basically creating his world. And oh, by the way, his parents are a big part of his programming,
Mhm.
because then he instantly gets to check the victim box, right? You know?
Yep.
And so how do you, because you deal with men as well, how do you combat that when a guy wants to sink into this whole, but for my mom or my dad treating me this way, or that level of trauma, no matter how small or large, how do you get them around that?
Yeah, so I don't know if I have any like amazing hack for that. For me, I think it's perspective, and you really can only gain that perspective by talking to other men, and that's where, at least in our program, and I know yours too, is very very centric around actually having a real brotherhood where you strip down all the pretense and it's just honesty. And so for me, I was really good at lying to myself, of making myself think I'm better than I am. And it's because I kind of surrounded myself with all the guys who weren't going to be a mirror for me, right? They weren't going to say to me like you would. You would pull my card if I was out of line. I surrounded myself with all the guys who wouldn't do that because I was too insecure to handle correction, to handle feedback.
We could agree that's probably most men, right?
I think so. I think it's a little bit of a defense mechanism. So then you couple on any dysfunction or trauma on top of that. It's a survival skill, right? It's actually unnatural to willingly take in negativity, about yourself because it doesn't feel good, but it's essential for growth, right? And so that's where I honestly think the fastest way for any man to get out of his own way is to see other men. And again, I'm fortunate enough that through my experiences, I went to several places for therapy and things like that. I immediately saw that, okay, you had things happen to you that are not okay, right? Like there's plenty of dysfunction that shouldn't have happened. But hey, brother, you got a lot easier than a lot of these other people too. And when you have that moment of truth, that perspective shift, you're like, ooh, okay, I need to own this crap and I need to fix this. And so again, it's not to downplay your experiences. It's a race to the bottom to compare each other's traumas.
Yeah.
But there is a very powerful thing for someone trying to genuinely heal, to see like, ooh, I'm pretty comfortable with my crap. He can keep his crap. That is a very powerful initial motivator to take ownership. And so for me, I was so stubborn that it wasn't until I really started, it was 2016 was the first time I like really laid it down in front of people, honestly, like at this intensive therapy thing here in Tennessee called Onsite.
How was that received, or how was that experience? Because that's nowhere near like what you're doing now. And
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, the first time kind of laying it out there, but also, was it a safe container? What,
Yeah. So like it was the first time in my life I felt like there wouldn't be life and death consequences for admitting I'm flawed, and that, yeah, it was a pretty safe environment, right? You work day in and day out with the same group of people, very small group setting, but I was expecting nothing but rejection, and actually got compassion and understanding from my peers in this group. And that was kind of when I first saw, also when they shared their stuff, that maybe my stuff's not so bad, and
Sure.
and I can do this, right? I can actually grow from this or heal from this. And so it's not like it magically happened overnight, but it's a roundabout way to answer your question. I don't think there's any like secret cheat code a guy can do for himself to just willpower his way over dysfunction or whatever from your past. There has to be an acknowledgement of what happened factually. Hey, these things aren't okay, because you have to diagnose the sickness to know the cure. But that perspective, I think, is probably the most rapid shift a man can have to like see someone else's story honestly. And that's why we both work so hard to connect men for real, to not like talk about, trendy things or high level cliche things, but to really be like, hey dude, did you call your wife today? Are you actually loving on your wife this week? What about your kids? Did you actually make time for them like you said you were going to do? Yeah, no. Okay, well, why not? Let's fix that. Like that forces you to be a way better guy and grow through whatever it was. So hopefully that answered the question well enough.
No, it's interesting because I think what you just described and laid out is probably a massive fear for most men. Like, so you're saying the quickest way for me to kind of process certain parts of my program that are holding me back is to get around other men and watch them process theirs, have that unique perspective of okay, two things happen there. Either, wow, that guy's dealing with a lot more than I am, mine's not too bad, right? That perspective shift, or hey, we're all dealing with a ton of shit, uniquely ours, and if we could just help each other through it, it's game changing. Because one of the things we preach, and I know you agree with too, is taking care of your brother. Because when you are heavily, if not completely, focused on another man and walking him through his pit, then it's impossible to be depressed, to be sad, to be have anxiety, like all these little weenie terms, like they don't exist inside of helping another person. And so, yeah, to your point, it's hard to get men to say, okay, I'll come hang out with you guys, and a couple of dudes will walk through their shit together. Let's see what that looks like. That's a tough ask.
It is funny because you have to almost like Trojan horse that. That is actually the fix, but that's not what they think they need.
Yep.
So you gotta try and draw them in with something else. But I literally every class we've done with Elite Sentinel, the unanimous term is I thought I was the only one, and I finally realized I needed a real brotherhood. Like some version of that sentence, every single guy says the same thing. On like what was the best thing about the program, they all say that.
Sure.
It's something to the effect of brotherhood, and I was alone before and now I'm not, and I thought I was the only one with my problems, and we'll week to week even.
Yes, but let's keep going down that road.
Yeah.
Let's say they're in your brotherhood and they're realizing, holy shit, I'm not the only one, and because this guy was willing to be vulnerable and share his, I'll share mine. But unless the brotherhood all lives on the same block, these guys are going home, and then how are they? Have you gotten feedback on how they're showing up or processing this with their, like, all their bros, like the guys they went to high school with, the guys that are, coming over in a couple of days for Super Bowl? How are they, how is that relationship once you've experienced like what it really means to connect with another human?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of the side effects of when you level up as a man is you inevitably start to level up your circles too. And in a lot of cases, you don't necessarily even need to like hold some hard boundary, but you're just going to realize like, do I really want to be spending Super Bowl Sunday with these guys? Like, no offense to them, but they just kind of seem to be content to be the old version of me that I don't want anything to do with anymore. Like old George sucked, right? Like if you knew me, a decade ago, you would have been like, you wouldn't even have given me the time of day because you would have recognized immediately, like, this guy's so full of his own shit. He thinks it don't stink. He thinks he's perfect, right? I was all the problems that we try to fix in men. And like that's happened to me too, is, I have old friendships and stuff that just really aren't there anymore. Not because I hate those guys or anything, but I kind of just went in a different direction with my life. I started moving in a different direction. So
what does it look like to create those boundaries? Because I don't think any guy that would come hang out with us would then quote unquote level up. And we already sound like some pretentious douchebags, but
right.
Like, what I'm saying is I don't think a guy starts to evolve as a man and step into like this new version that he wants to be for his family, for himself. I don't think he wants to cut his friends from high school loose, and maybe he's not into like getting wasted on Super Bowl Sunday and placing bets and talking shit all day. But I guess what I'm saying is, have you seen any success where they can bring some of their friends? Most guys that are winning want to go reach back down and grab one of their buddies. But it doesn't always work that way. And then to your point, at some point they have a hard decision to make, a boundary to create. But have you seen any success where they can go back, to the beehive and tell a few more bees? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things we instill through our 12 weeks together is like, look, you're stepping up to be a leader everywhere you go. It's not just at your work. It's not just your family. It's also with your friends. Peer leadership is absolutely a skill set that needs to happen. And again, it's not like out of pretentious, oh, I'm better than you. It's more of like, no, I care about you, man. Like, hey, let's not do this anymore. Why don't we do this instead? And that's what I think it means to be an elite sentinel, is you go make impact wherever you go. And your friends are no different. So yeah, we've had a lot of guys, they've learned the tools, they start implementing it and building the disciplines, and they're having a lot of success in their personal life. And a lot of their friends are kind of just asking like, hey, what changed?
Yeah, what are you up
You're
to?
different.
Yeah.
It's almost like they see the difference and like, I want a piece of that. Because it is infectious in a good way, right? It's a contagious experience. When you start to succeed more, people want to be more like you. And again, it's not an arrogance thing. It's like, well, now that I have this understanding and knowledge, I absolutely should pay it forward. And so a lot of guys have been able to do that successfully. I mean, we've got guys starting local Bible studies. They're doing all kinds of stuff now in their local communities.
I want to touch on the word leadership, because I think, you said it 3 or 4 times, leader and leadership. And I would be interested. I'm going to talk right to the camera here. If you're a dude listening to this, scale of 1 to 10, like where would you put your leadership skills? And not, in the finance world, or if you run a business, or if you're like a manager. Like, I think most men are failing to lead at home. I think they're failing to lead, just to your point in general. When you walk into any situation, are you walking in there as a leader? So my question for the audience is, scale of 1 to 10, where would you rank your leadership? And then my question to you is, because we deal with men specifically, and I think that's a huge issue. Like, I can't tell you how many men I come across where their wife runs their shit or runs the show. And it's almost a joke at this point. Like, one of my least favorite things is when a guy's like, "Oh yeah, I'm like the fourth kid. I'm one of the other, one of the kids," and they joke about it. I'm like, man, that's a rough spot to be. That's a lot to put on your wife, but also that's not really a joking thing. And again, I'm not trying to ever approach it from shame or guilt. I just want you to understand how important leadership is as a man, and all the different ways in which it should be showing up. So yeah, what are your thoughts on it?
It's the number one reason you exist, is to do the act of leadership. Every man, at some level, you will not feel fulfilled. You will not feel purpose in your life unless you actually take some level of leadership on. You're designed for it. That's number one, right? So there's the 4 pillars of manhood. Number 1 is king. That's the role of the leader. Now, leadership is not a title. It is an action. It is a verb that you're doing for others. And again, it's not to be a tyrant either. It's in service to others. So real leadership is, you notice a problem, you take steps to actually fix the problem, whatever the problem is. That applies to work. That applies to your family. That applies to anything. Are you the type of guy who sees the shopping cart that it hasn't been put back in the aisle and just lets it go? Or do you go and actually put it away? What type of man are you? I can pick apart a guy very quickly by just observing little things about him like that. It says a huge level of like, okay, if in public that's who you are, I can guarantee I know who you are privately with your family. You're probably the dude who's checked out, not paying attention.
I think it's gotten complacent and comfortable, and they've almost created a story. They almost buy their own bullshit where it's okay to just like, oh, because I work so hard, and when I get home, I want to crack a beer and hit the lazy boy.
Yep.
Or so, for my wife to quote unquote take care of me, or cook, clean, etc. It's become this role of that's morphed into, again, kid number 4. It seems to be the MO, and they're so comfortable with it that they joke about it, and it's just like mind blowing to me.
And then they can't imagine why their wife doesn't want to have sex with them.
Yeah.
If you're creating a dynamic, guys, where you are making your wife be your mother, I assure you she's not attracted to you. You could be the fittest, most handsome dude on planet Earth, but if you behave like a boy, she's not interested. And it's because you're not meeting her core need, and you're failing to understand that the number one thing she wants is that protection, that presence that says, hey, if shit hits the fan, I'm going to be your man and protect you and the family. If your daily routines are, I never make decisions, I offset it all to her because, well, she's smart and capable, or it's 50-50, what you're doing is taking 50% of the burden you should be carrying and putting it on your tiny wife and saying, well, you're smart, figure it out.
By the way, this is going to trigger some of the ladies, but that's okay. Because the reality is they want to show up in their full feminine, and they think what you're describing right now is toxic masculinity, right? The big word that I can't stand we could get into as well. Sorry to cut you off. It's interesting to me, and I hope it's happening, because I hope there's a girl out there. Just the concept of tiny wife.
Well, physically on average.
Yeah, physically, but it's really like
that's what I meant.
If it's 50-50, like you said, it's almost 75-25, because I'm taking 50% of what I should be doing as a leader and throwing it over to you, and just throwing my hands up and saying, happy wife, and she makes the decision. So if she calls it, then it's on her. And then, where are we going with this? I don't know. I just want to make sure we're not,
No, I mean, we can get back to that in a second, but like the point, guys, is if you're not even taking basic steps to just handle basic things, she doesn't trust you with any big things, because the narrative that starts to play in her head, because the feminine mind is constantly testing, am I safe? And safe is a relative term. It's financial, physical, spiritual, emotional, right? It's all the safes. She's constantly pressure testing her world around her to know, is that still true? That's how women get their security, right? And that's their number one primal need. And so if you are signaling to her consistently that I'm the 4th kid in the house, she's not interested in having sex with you. It's really not that hard. So for a lot of guys, before you can even lead, you have to stop following. You have to just stand still and start doing basics that men should just do, because you're a grown-ass man who takes responsibility and accountability for yourself first. You lead yourself first.
Okay, give them a short list, because they won't know what the basics are. They're just going to stand still now.
The basics is things like your physical fitness, your self-respect. Do you keep promises to yourself? when you say you're going to go do something, do you actually go and do it? Or is it just lip service to get people off your back, right? It's integrity. It's action focused. Oh, there's a light bulb out. Let me go get the ladder and fix it right now before I forget and get busy. Like that's what I'm talking about.
You know what an easy one is too? Is the dinner one. Like, come on, man. Like, if you are, first of all, you should be dating your wife anyway. But if you're
100%.
not dating your wife, start. And then some of my guys, because we kind of do mandatory weekly date nights, you have to return and report. You have to, whatever. And there will be a 35, 40-minute, sometimes 3-hour conversation around where should we go. And at the end of the day, just pick the damn place. You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to do? It's going to be a shitty one, then pick a better one next week. I mean, so it's something that small that guys will not touch for the sake of like potential collision or did I get it wrong or just don't. There's an opportunity to step up, an easy one.
Yeah, just make decisions. And so here's the other the lie that our modern world has believed, women and men, is that for a man to just make any decision, it means he's like dominating his will over others. No, you say it like a recommendation. Hey, let's go to that steakhouse we love. Okay, honey, let's go. Or she'll be like, nah, I don't want that. Okay, well, how about this place instead? Let's go to that one. Well, I don't know about that. Okay, honey, I've given you 2 options. We're going to one of the 2. If you don't really care, I'm going to go to the steakhouse. Just decide.
Yep.
And because at the end of the day, especially if you got kids,
but there's so much power in that small move, and power
because
in
you're
the right way,
taking
the
mental
healthy way.
load. You're taking mental load off of her, right? That's about what I was about to say. Is she doesn't want to make these decisions. She's not going to feel like you're taking advantage of her or whatever, because she's had 1,000 things and the kid's going, mom, 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 all day. So then you come home and then start piling on, mommy, what do I do? She's just exasperated. She's tapped out on having to make any decisions. So step the hell up and just make some small ones. Yep. It's not like we're, invading a country here. There's a very low risk thing. Most women are going to respond extremely positive to that because they're like, oh, thank you.
Yeah, took one off my plate. Yeah, well, there's this interesting concept in neuroscience called decision fatigue, and it's at a cellular level. Your brain just starts to say, all right, I'm tapping out, which is why, men, if you've ever fallen off a diet, it's usually at night. If you're trying to quit smoking and you end up picking up a cigarette or something, it's usually in the evening because your brain is just done making decisions, so you'll default to your program. But the reality is this is why guys that make big boy decisions are very minimalists. You'll see like the Steve Jobs, RIP, the black shirt and a pair of jeans. And that's the only thing in his closet because he's determined to not have to make 75 decisions before he even leaves the house to get to Apple, right? It's like, let me save all my crazy mental energy for the decision that matters. And when your wife is at home all day with the kids, making all the calendar, all the lunches, all the things, and then you can't even help her decide where to go eat, she's going to, it will be that one decision that breaks the camel's back.
Well, and so every time you fail that test, you're just reconfirming to her that you're not the guy. You're just reconfirming to her that you're the lazy bum who she doesn't want to have sex with. And so it works in reverse too. You start stepping up and just without needing to be prompted, right? You just take care of business. Yep. She'll go, oh, there's that man I married. There's Prince Charming, right? And there's another, date your wife, be sweet to your wife, like you're still boyfriend and girlfriend. Keep impressing her, like pursue her. She wants to feel that. But you don't get to use your leadership capital, quote unquote, on anything if you're not even doing fundamentals, the basics, right? So hopefully that described those quick enough for you.
Yeah, 100%. It was just good to give them a list because again, like I think where some men go with it, and maybe it's because this is their experience between the social media pressure, the state of the nation, but also just maybe their experience with their wife is what we call dunking on your wife. So they won't show up for all these things, and then they'll finally show up for the one that they think matters, right? And then they just they posterize their wife with this emphatic, common sense, logical argument of "I told you so," and they feel so effing good for about 3 seconds until they realize they just destroyed their wife, and that wasn't at all the intended result, right? And so I just want to make sure that we're clear on, to your point, you've got to earn all these foundational or fundamentals before you even have the right to have such a conflict, if you will.
Right. Well, and even then, like when I need to correct my wife on something that's relatively serious, I'm not dunking on her. It's not effective. If I dunked on you, Nick, are you going to receive that very well?
Absolutely not.
No. So like, why are you doing it to your wife, right? Yeah. So I mean, there's wisdom that's still applied. Like I hold firm boundaries. If my wife talks to me in a manner that's disrespectful, I'll be like, you want to try that again? I mean, like there's a line, but I'm not going to be like, you little, how dare you? Like that's you've already lost. That's not that's not strength. That's not leadership. Like I don't need to dominate a situation, right? Because I'm secure enough in myself.
Win an argument or,
Right.
or prove my manliness or assert, like you said, basically assert dominance is a common term. Yeah.
Right. Your wife wants you to be bearing the weight of these problems. And so if you then turn around and bash her with your authority, it again just feeds this narrative of you can't be trusted with it. So why would she yield to your authority now? Because you've just made her pay a price for letting you try.
So how do we walk a man? Let's rewind a little bit. Only because I keep stepping off the mic, my bad. How do we walk a man through if he has the type of wife that believes in 50-50, if not 51-49? I'm just trying to think of I would say it's a majority of men nowadays are where they haven't figured out how to take the power back in their house. And again, not from a dominant position, but I'm just trying to think of ways we can help some of these guys knock off a quick checklist. I think you've nailed that one. What are some other ways that men can show up specific to the energy that they bring through their four walls to start to change things at home? Because a lot of men aren't happy at home, but they don't realize they've created 99% of that,
Yeah, before you can even attempt to address those, you have to change you from the inside out. And so if that's happening, what's likely going on pretty much, I'd say 95+% of the time, is that fundamentally you've got something going on within you that you're either blind to or kind of know it's there, but you just don't want to deal with it. It's an inadequacy. And I assure you, if you notice it, your wife absolutely notices it, because women's superpower is emotions. It's not a flaw, it's their feature, right? To be highly emotionally attuned. So she's picking up on this stuff. So that comes out to the programming piece. Your subconscious is showing up as this depleted, passive, weak guy who won't, she wants to be corrected. If she talks to you disrespectfully in the moment, she's not going to like it, but she doesn't want you to just sit there and take it.
Yeah, it's another test. It's a button push.
It's a shit test. Yeah, because that to her then again says, well, if he won't even hold me accountable, what's he going to do to a bigger issue, right? There's a lot there, right? And don't make a mountain out of a molehill. But if you're doing that over and over and over, you're probably the guy who has limiting beliefs, lack of confidence. You're not keeping promises to yourself, and your internal narrative is probably very self-destructive. So the way to test that is, if other people talked to me the way that I talk to myself, would I allow them to be in my life?
And the answer 9 out of 10 is absolutely not.
And if it's no, you need to immediately change your self-talk, your morning routine, the way that you build yourself up each day first. And you don't even get to start trying to change the power dynamics in your marriage until you've actually grown yourself. So again, this is why critics will be like, oh, you're blaming men and everything. No, I'm just helping men recognize that until you own you first, it's just not going to, you can't change anything else because you're still the first foundational step that has to happen. And as you start to grow anyway, she's going to respond to it.
She'll be forced to.
Well, right. But she'll start to pick up on it because she's emotionally more attuned than you are, almost always. And she's going to start noticing oh, he seems to have more confidence. He seems to respect him. He seems to keep his word better now. She's not going to be quite as hostile now to changes in the marriage.
What I've noticed too is that she'll actually test you more as you step into that. So
initially.
We call this showing up different. And so as you show up different because you're working on self, you're vibrating at a new frequency. She's going to pick up on this, like you said, emotionally, just completely tuned in 10x better than us. So she's going to notice it quickly. First thing is going to be an eyebrow raise. And be like, come on, I don't know. Especially if you have a pattern of kind of going ham sandwich for 21 days on any task or a New Year's resolution or, weight loss, and then you let off. She's going to, again, pressure test this new version of you because history has shown her that you're gonna hold fast to this new thing for 20 days and you're gonna revert back to old self. And so to your point, she doesn't feel safe yet. And then as guys, we'll get frustrated because you're like, are you seeing? Look at how
I'm doing all the things. Yeah. Why isn't it instantly making my marriage fixed?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the next level of the test is she's trying to see, are you committed? Are you interested or are you committed? And in many cases, this is a thing that most men are doing too. They'll do chore play. They'll pick up around the house. They'll do these things temporarily to basically try and manipulate her into having sex with
Hold on a second. Hold on. You got to rewind that one. That's my new favorite thing. I'm totally using that. Did you say chore play?
Chore play, yeah.
Foreplay?
Oh, if I mop, Mommy, if I do all the chores, mommy, will you have sex with me now, mommy? That's the dynamic you're
This is the
creating.
guy that does the dishes and does it with like very obvious as he looks over his shoulder. And he's like, I'm
Honey,
doing things.
Mommy, do I get a gold star now? I did all the things. No. Like I do shit around the house all the time, and I don't say anything to my wife.
Correct.
Because if my wife didn't live in this house, who's going to do it I have to do it anyway. Like I've got the time. I'm thinking about it. I see it. I'm just going to do it and get it off my plate.
With
right?
no expectation
With
of
zero
reciprocation.
expectation. That's table stakes. You want to be an adult? Congratulations. You don't get rewarded with sex for doing basics. Okay. Now we're talking in generalizations here, right? Obviously, there's a lot more to a situation than just, your chores and stuff. But chore play is a trap. A lot of guys think,
No, 100%. Because they don't do it. So now they've raised their little shitty bar, their standard, and all of a sudden my new standard is I'm going to do dishes 6 days in a row, and then by the time date night comes around, it's happening. And it's
right?
Like, come on, dude.
What have you done to actually pursue her? What have you actually done to step up with basic leadership throughout the week?
Can you help the audience understand a little more about when you say pursue? Because I don't want guys to think like I think you touched on it earlier about just dating your wife, like you did when you were
right.
Like, what's the first date look like? You washed the car, you took a shower finally, you got a haircut. Like the first date was insanely thought out, intentional. You showed up and you did pursue her, but of course you had a possibly ulterior motive. But talk about how a man now in a 15-year relationship, how does he show his wife that he wants to
It's
pursue?
intention. You become a student of her and you continue to take her on the adventure, right? She wanted to marry Prince Charming that's going to go slay the dragon, and that's what she still wants, right? So if you've been the guy who just comes home and does nothing, there's no charmingness, there's no romance or anything. You think she's going to be wowed, to go on date night with you? No, she's not excited about going on dates with you because you've been the bum all week, right? If you're Prince Charming, more often than not, she wants to go on the adventure with you. And sometimes that adventure is, okay, well, we got this, grandparents are keeping the kids. I'm exhausted. Are you exhausted, baby? Yes, I'm exhausted. Okay, great. Let's stay in. I'm going to order from our favorite place. I want you to pick the movie. Let's get some candles going, and we'll just have a stay-at-home date night.
Sure.
That's still that's effort. That's intention. It's spontaneous. It's energy, right? But like most guys would be like, I'm tired. Are you tired? Yeah. What do you watch? I don't know. What do you want to watch? There's no effort. You're not making any effort to show her that, hey, you're my girl. And I care about you, and I'm gonna continue to date you and make you feel special.
And it's funny because it sounds so simple, but to your point, when you're in a relationship for that long, you feel like you've already checked those boxes. Like you don't have to anymore, almost. And the same way you feel sex is like an obligation, right? But yeah, you don't feel like you're obligated to continue to show up from a place of just effort and intention.
Yeah.
Well,
what will eventually happen? Like again, I think it starts with the men, and again, here we go. Let's bring on the toxic masculinity claims. Men initiate and women respond in general. That is how we are created. It's how we're designed.
Wired, yeah.
To deny that is doing your marriage a disservice, right? So again, men, that's where I put the onus on you not to blame anyone. But if you actually start changing patterns of behavior, if you actually start growing, it's going to make changes for your whole family. You set the tone, right? That's leadership. It's culture. It's starting with self, leading by example, and then you kind of earn the right to hold boundaries and standards over time after you've actually lived it long enough, right? And so that is 9 times out of 10 the best way to be going. Now, that doesn't excuse your wife if she's in the wrong on things. And see, this is again where people try to poke holes in these comments. Blame is irrelevant, right? She's responsible for her. You're responsible for you. Own your piece. And if you are absolutely perfect, then you can go start picking apart her flaws. I'll wait for when you're perfect, guys. But
so just that little quick sentence, because it's a nuance that needs to be like hammered home for most people listening, is you're responsible for you and she's responsible for her, because you've heard it a million times. I think I said it earlier on this podcast, happy wife, happy life. And when you attribute your happiness to her happiness, then that puts a lot, again, it's almost like taking the weight and putting it on her. In order for me to be happy, wife, you have to be happy. So now you're not just responsible for your happiness, but you're responsible for mine as well. Mm-hmm. And people don't seem to understand that small little shift and how vital it is to just go do you, she does her, and you guys are connecting, communicating as a couple. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, and then responsibility is an interesting word too, because as the husband and father, you are the leader of your household, right? Like it or not, you are. We're programmed that way. You can debate that all you want, but for time immemorial, it falls on you, and it should fall on you because you're designed for it. that does not mean you take blame for everything, but you own the outcomes of them. All right. So if my wife is misbehaving or she's being terrible or whatever accusation you want to throw on it or whatever the behavior may be, ultimately I'm still responsible for the well-being of my family. So what am I going to do with it? Am I going to just hope that she figures it out, or am I going to address it with some strength and love? Hey, honey, I don't know if you noticed this, but you've really been on edge the last couple days. Can you tell me what's going on there? I'm gonna peel the onion back and then see if there's a solution we can fix.
Just real quick, the way you said it, I think would probably trigger her though, because you came across like a freaking cop or an army guy right now.
Well, what's the alternative? You're being a terrible wife.
No,
Get
I'm
better.
just saying like my friction, my pushback there would be, I don't know if it was word choice. I just think because you carry yourself a certain way that I could see like, oh shit, dude, fuck, what'd I do? But no, you're absolutely right. I think that, well, let's really hammer home the distinction between responsible for the outcome versus like responsible for behavior.
Yes.
You know?
Okay. So like let's say my wife yells at our daughter. Okay. Now I didn't make her do that. She's responsible for doing that. She still needs to apologize to our daughter for her behavior. But if I'm trying to create better family outcomes, am I just going to hope that she does that? Am I going to just try and ignore it or go apologize around my wife's back? Hey, honey, mommy shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, mommy's had a rough week. So
right. Am I going to do that? Or instead, am I going to pull my wife aside and behind closed doors and be like, hey, honey, I don't know what's going on, but I don't know if you realize this. Your tone with our daughter was really, really rough. Like, is there something going on?
Perfect. So that was good.
So,
that one was good.
So now I'm
going to make you watch your other one back.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, I'm pretty aggressive.
Maybe I didn't. Yeah. My point there with a lot of men is they try to problem solve logically, and they're not actually peeling the emotions. So again, generally with your wife, if there's like erratic behavior, she's not actually crazy. There's something going on. It's a warning flag to you to pay attention, dummy, that emotionally she's probably in distress about something, and you've been too blockheaded to pay attention up until now, till she's exploded about something. It's generally just kind of like, oh, that was weird. Hey, what's going on, babe? You know what? Are you stressed, angry, or sad right now? You give her options of like what she's feeling. But back to like this, fake example of if my wife raised her voice, a good, strong, loving man who owns the outcomes for his family and his marriage would then pull his wife aside. Hey, honey, your tone was kind of rough. Is something going on?
Good? Yeah.
What happened there? Okay, well, hey, I think you should go apologize to her daughter. So I'm still stating my expectations. I'm holding boundaries, but there's lots of grace, lots of empathy. I'm not dunking on my wife. You were wrong. You yelled at our daughter. Go make it right. That's just as bad.
That was also very Trump. Very Trump.
Yeah. Go apologize. I can't do that. But that's just as bad as trying to like go around and be like, honey, mommy was stressed, and because now you're like conniving in the dark, right?
Yeah,
you should be the lighthouse. You should be the pillar that shines the way to safety for your whole family. And so again, my wife's responsible to go make her own apology to our daughter, but I'm responsible for changing the dynamic in our family and not allowing that to become a pattern.
Sure. Yeah, I think most men where the issue might lie in that situation is if they lack the capacity to have that collision with their wife in a place that's just pure love. Like you said, I'm not dunking, I'm not shaming you. Look, I'm guilty of it too. Like I when I have a long week, I come home and I go on a tirade, and I would love for you to check me because I don't want to show up that way for my kids.
I snapped at my wife this very morning that we're recording this, right? So like I get it wrong too. I'm a human being.
Yep.
My wife will tell you, and she gets it wrong too, right? And that's where, as you grow as a man, you make amends faster. The lows from when you do have a misstep are a lot less intense because both of you are more conditioned towards healthy dynamics as opposed to all the other things that can go on.
That's really all you can hope for, by the way.
Right.
It's exactly what you just stated, is like this little band of frequency.
Yeah.
Like it literally, you just play in a smaller and smaller, tighter world where you course correct faster. The highs aren't as high, the lows aren't as low because you can recognize it. You have a healthier style of course correcting and communicating. And that's really, you can't hope for it to go away. Like we do this for a living, and we both snapped at our wives this week. So we're not awesome, not even a little bit. It's all you can do is just hyper aware and faster course correction.
Yeah, I like in the same car ride, we were driving our daughter to school. They were doing their school's, but it's their 5th birthday celebration. So we were on the way to that all together as a family, and it was like maybe 5 to 10 minutes of like a little bit of a breach of trust, right? I got a little stern about something I didn't need to get stern about, whatever. And then I, like, after 5 minutes, I was like, you know what? Hey, I'm sorry for getting combative. That's not okay. I don't want to have her whole day being like in limbo over this, right? So can you forgive me? Yeah, we're good. And then we were like literally 5 minutes later after we dropped her daughter off, laughing about stuff and making jokes about,
Now, how
things.
long have you guys been working on that though? Because I know from personal experience and things that I've seen, the first time you show up the way you just showed up right there, it might get completely brushed aside, not recognized. Okay, guy, that was half-hearted. That was bullshit. How two things were at play there. A, she received it well, it sounds like, and then you guys were able to get back to a good state together as a union also quickly. And those are two things that I think guys are scared of, either it not happening ever or not happening in the timeline that they've kind of predetermined, which is definitely mistake number one. But my question is, I'll rewind. How long did it take you to get there with your wife where you can recognize your behavior and she can the same? You can apologize in a I say professional, but in an empathetic, manner,
Adult.
a loving manner as adult.
Yeah.
And then you guys can go back to like life as normal. What type of work have you done?
It's taken us a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is where, like, again, we're speaking in generalities. So you have to use wisdom to apply these things to your situation, right? I had created a lot of damage, right? With my infidelities, quite literally, had cheated on my wife in our past, right? So there's a lot of wounding in our stories. And then you couple in our childhoods, right? And we both revert to little Whitney and little George. And the way that those two little kids fight each other is very not healthy. So yeah, I mean, it took a long time to own both of our pieces of the pie. For me to have empathy for her inner child struggles and for her to have empathy for mine, right? That took a lot of time, but we had a lot of baggage to unpack. If you're in a relatively healthy place, you're going to experience growth. Infidelity is probably the worst possible thing to have to start working through,
Sure.
right? To re-earning trust and safety when you mess up, because every future problem just hits that wound again, right? So it's very painful for a wife to be able to forgive and forget over something like that, right? So we had a big uphill battle of my own doing. I did it to myself and to her. So again, like don't panic if you're hearing this. If you don't have loads of baggage, she's going to test you initially because she just wants to know it's real.
Yep.
But when she sees that it's real, she's going to start trusting it. And she wants that she doesn't want to be mad. She doesn't want to be in emotional distress. She wants peace. She wants to be able to be the nurturer. And like you said earlier, she wants to be in her full feminine form, which comes from you being more masculine. And it's not to domineer over her. It's to amplify both of you in your better selves. So